All right, folks, gather round, because today we're trekking deep into a place that's, well, let's just say it's got a reputation.
A reputation that's both beautiful and a little bit unnerving, right?
You got it. We're talking about a forest so thick it practically chokes out the sunlight, so silent it'll make your ears ring, and so full of spooky stories it's earned a nickname that sends shivers down your spine.
Ooh, I think I know where we're headed with this.
Yeah.
We're diving into Aokigahara, right?
Bingo. Aokigahara, aka the Sea of Trees, or, if you're feeling brave, the Suicide Forest of Japan.
Man, that name alone just conjures up so many images, doesn't it?
It really does. And those images are kind of all over the map. See, this place, it's got this weird double life.
A personality, almost.
Yeah, exactly. On the one hand, it's this stunning natural wonder, like seriously drop-dead gorgeous. But then on the other hand, there's this dark history, this heaviness that hangs over it.
It's like those two sides are constantly wrestling with each other.
Exactly. So, first things first, let's set the scene. Picture this. We're on the northwestern slope of Mount Fuji. You know, that iconic snow-capped peak that screams Japan.
Oh yeah, textbook postcard material.
Right. And right there, clinging to the side of this majestic mountain, is Aokigahara. Now here's a fun fact. This forest, it's literally growing on hardened lava.
Hold up, hardened lava?
Yep, from a massive volcanic eruption way back in 864 AD. So we're talking ancient ground here.
Wow, I mean, that kind of adds a whole other layer to it, doesn't it? It's like this place has literally been shaped by fire and fury.
For real. And it covers a pretty decent chunk of land, too, about 30 square kilometers, which is roughly 12 square miles for us Americans.
So not exactly a quick stroll through the woods.
No, unless you've got a week and a compass that works, maybe.
Okay, so we've got this forest rooted in volcanic history, clinging to the side of a sacred mountain. Where does the Sea of Trees part come in?
Ah, well, that's where the density comes into play. We're talking about trees packed so tightly together, sunlight struggles to even reach the forest floor.
I've seen pictures. It's like this solid wall of green.
It is. Primarily Hinoki cypress and hemlock trees, creating this super dense canopy.
So dense it even messes with the rain.
Pretty much. Like a natural umbrella on steroids.
Yeah.
You step under that canopy and it's like entering another world.
Gotta be a little creepy though, right? All dark and quiet.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely got an eerie vibe. And that quiet, it's not just any quiet. Remember all that lava rock we talked about?
Yeah, the stuff the forest is growing on.
Exactly. It's incredibly porous, which means it absorbs sound like a sponge.
Yeah.
You walk through Aokigahara, and it's like the world's hit the mute button.
Man, that would be a little freaky.
Totally.
Yeah.
Especially when you start factoring in all the stories, the legends, the paranormal stuff.
Ooh, yeah, let's get into that. This forest is notoriously haunted, right?
Notoriously is putting it mildly. It's long been associated with yūrei, which are basically vengeful spirits from Japanese mythology.
And these aren't your Casper, the friendly ghost types, are they?
Nah, these are more like the restless souls who got a raw deal in life, died with some serious unfinished business, and are now, let's say, expressing their displeasure.
So not exactly the kind of spirits you want to bump into on a nature walk.
Not unless you're looking for some extra spice in your life.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the connection to the afterlife goes back even further.
Oh, how so?
Well, there are these whispers of older traditions like yubasut.
Yubasut. That rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
It was basically this practice, mostly in times of hardship,
Right.
where a family would take an elderly or sick relative to a remote location.
Yeah.
And, leave them there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
It is. And it just adds to this sense that Aokigahara has been tied to death in the spirit world for centuries, long before it earned the nickname we're all familiar with.
Right, the suicide forest. I think that's what most people immediately think of when they hear Aokigahara.
Definitely. That association really took hold in the 1960s, and unfortunately, it's stuck ever since.
And the sad thing is, the numbers, while officials stopped publicly releasing them a while back, they were significant.
They were. Like, in the early 2000s, they were finding over 100 bodies a year. And even in 2010, there were 54 confirmed suicides out of over 200 attempts.
It's just heartbreaking. And there are reports that suicides tend to spike in March, which in Japan is the end of their fiscal year.
Yeah, you got to wonder if that added pressure, the end-of-year anxieties, contributes to it. And the methods, from what we know, are mostly hanging or drug overdose.
It speaks to a level of desperation that's hard to even fathom.
It really does. But it's important to mention that there have been, and continue to be, efforts to address this. There are signs posted at the forest entrances, urging people to think of their loved ones, to reach out for help.
It's a good reminder that there are resources out there that no one has to suffer alone.
Absolutely. And there's this annual search for bodies that's been going on since 1970, involving police, volunteers, even journalists. It's a somber task, but it shows just how seriously this issue is taken.
It's also interesting to look at how culture and media have played a role in shaping Aokigahara's image.
Oh yeah. The influence of stories, both fictional and real, can be incredibly powerful.
For example, there's this 1960 novel by Seiichi Matsumoto called Tower of Waves, where one of the characters actually dies by suicide in the forest.
Yeah, that seems to have really cemented the association in a lot of people's minds.
And then, about a decade later, there was The Complete Suicide Manual by Wataru Tsurumi, which straight up labeled Aokigahara as the perfect place to die. Copies were even reportedly found near some of the bodies.
That's chilling. Like, talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is. And of course, there was that whole incident with Logan Paul's YouTube video back in 2017, which,
Yeah, not exactly a shining moment for sensitivity, but it did, sadly, thrust Aokigahara back into the global spotlight.
True. And while it sparked a lot of necessary conversations about responsible content creation, it also, unfortunately, kind of reinforced those negative associations.
It's important to remember, though, that suicide, despite maybe some differing cultural nuances, is absolutely viewed as a tragedy in Japan.
100%. It's not something that's taken lightly.
Right. There have been government initiatives, local efforts to increase awareness, hotlines, trained personnel patrolling the area, even security cameras at the entrances. They're trying to help.
Which is so crucial, because even though this forest has become tied to this incredibly sad and dark history, it's also important to remember that it's a thriving ecosystem.
Oh, yeah. For all the doom and gloom, Aokigahara is teeming with life.
Seriously, the biodiversity there is remarkable.
We're talking Asiatic black bears, shrews, moles, all kinds of bats.
Don't forget the deer, Hanshu deer, to be precise.
Right, and foxes, wild boars, badgers. I mean, it's a whole menagerie in there.
And the birds. Over 60 different species have been spotted there, everything from tits to woodpeckers to cuckoos to the oriental turtle dove.
It's like a birder's paradise, with a side of spooky.
Exactly. And we haven't even touched on the reptiles and amphibians. You've got frogs, skinks, snakes.
And don't forget the bugs, beetles, all sorts of insects, and tons of butterflies, like the silver-washed fritillary and the holly blue, which, fun fact, are actually quite beautiful.
And the plant life is just as diverse. Conifers like the Hinoki cypress and Japanese cedar.
Yeah, and broadleaf trees like Japanese maples, birch, rhododendrons.
And underneath all that, you've got ferns, mosses, liverworts, all kinds of herbaceous plants. It's an incredibly rich ecosystem.
It really is. And that's part of what makes Aokigahara so fascinating, right? This juxtaposition of life and death, of beauty and tragedy, all tangled up together.
It's a stark reminder that nature doesn't really care about our labels or our stories. Life finds a way, even in the most unexpected places.
Word. Okay, so we've talked about the history, the ecology, the less than cheerful side of things, but we can't wrap up without diving into the spooky stuff, the paranormal side of Aokigahara.
Right, the stories that really make your skin crawl.
Exactly. And we've got some pretty wild accounts from folks who claim to have experienced some freaky things in that forest.
From what I've seen, the YouTube rabbit hole is deep with these kinds of stories.
Deep and creepy. Like, people talk about hearing disembodied footsteps, voices whispering their names, even full-blown chants and singing, even when they're totally alone.
And then there are the sudden chills, right? Like intense cold spots that pop up even on the hottest days.
Yep, classic paranormal activity right there.
And those weird orbs of light that people see moving through the trees, like, what is up with those?
Who knows? Maybe some kind of energy manifestation, maybe just swamp gas.
Or maybe something else entirely.
Right. The possibilities are endless.
And let's not forget the stories about cursed or ritual sites hidden within the forest. Places where people claim to have gotten sick, experienced bad luck, or just felt this overwhelming sense of dread.
Yeah, and the trails themselves are supposedly super disorienting, like the forest is actively trying to get you lost. Some people even claim the trails shift and change, so you can never be sure you're going the right way.
Which, when you think about it, plays on a very primal fear, right? Getting lost in the wilderness, being at the mercy of the elements.
Totally. And then you've got these stories about people finding mystical spots like clearings or strange rock formations, only to go back later and find that they've completely vanished.
Like the forest is playing tricks on you.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are the yūrei sightings, which are pretty much what you'd expect from classic Japanese ghost stories.
Hmm.
Pale figures with long black hair, often wearing white, just kind of lurking in the shadows.
Some folks claim they've been followed by these figures, even outside the forest.
Right. Like, imagine getting home from a hike and feeling like you've brought something back with you.
Ugh, I'd need a sage smudging and like 10 salt baths after that.
For real. And some of the stories get even weirder. There are accounts of people seeing apparitions that seem to be from different time periods, some even bearing the marks of their deaths.
Whoa, like showing how they died by suicide.
Yeah, it's pretty grim. And then there's this whole thing about time distortion, where people claim to have lost hours, days, even weeks while inside the forest.
Wait, what? Like time just slips away.
That's what they say.
Man, that's trippy. And it's not just the forest itself. Some of the creepiest stories come from the cave systems underneath Aokigahara.
Oh yeah, the caves.
Mm.
People have reported hearing whispers down there, seeing fleeting shadows, feeling this overwhelming sense of despair. And there are even stories about the caves changing shape, almost like they're alive.
Right, like they're trying to track you.
Exactly. And then you've got those unexplained sounds, the screams, growls, shrieks. It's enough to make anyone think twice about venturing into those caves.
It definitely adds to the whole haunted vibe. And then there's that theory from the Buddhist monk Kyo Fukai back in 2000.
Oh yeah, the one where he suggested that the spirits in Aokigahara are actually calling people in, tempting them to,
Mm.
you know.
To end their lives.
Yeah, that's some dark stuff right there.
It really blurs the lines between mental health and the paranormal. It makes you wonder, are these people drawn to Aokigahara because of their own internal struggles, or is there something more sinister at play?
It's a question that's probably impossible to answer definitively.
Hmm.
But whether you believe in ghosts or not, the sheer volume of these stories, the consistency over the years, it's hard to ignore.
It really speaks to the power of this place.
It does.
So let's say someone's listening to this and thinking, hey, I kind of want to check this place out. What advice would you give them?
Well, first and foremost, respect is key. Aokigahara is a place with a heavy history, a lot of pain and sorrow woven into its very fabric.
It's not just your average tourist destination.
Not at all. So, approach it with sensitivity, be mindful of the weight it carries.
And practically speaking, stick to the established trails. Don't wander off into restricted areas.
Right, there are signs for a reason. And remember, there are cameras at the entrances, so, Big Brother's watching. Mostly for safety, though.
Yeah, it's all about keeping people safe, both physically and mentally. It's important to reiterate those resources we mentioned earlier. If you're struggling, if you need help, please reach out. There are hotlines, support groups, people who care.
You're never alone, folks.
And despite all the darkness surrounding Aokigahara, it is, at its core, a place of stunning natural beauty. The lava caves are incredible, the forest itself is breathtaking, and the wildlife is truly remarkable.
It's like this weird paradox, right? This place of immense beauty and immense sadness.
It's a duality that really makes you think.
It does. So just to recap, today we ventured deep into the heart of Aokigahara, the Sea of Trees, the Suicide Forest. We've explored its fiery origins, its rich biodiversity, its tragic history, and its enduring reputation as a paranormal hotspot.
We've talked about the legends of the yūrei, the chilling accounts of paranormal activity, and the ongoing efforts to address the very real issue of suicide.
And we've touched on the importance of respecting this place, of being mindful of its complexities, and of seeking help if you need it.
Ultimately, Aokigahara is more than just a forest.
It's a symbol of the duality of nature, of the interplay between life and death, of the mysteries that lie hidden beneath the surface of our world.
It's a place that continues to fascinate, to frighten, and to make us question everything we think we know.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What do you think Aokigahara represents? Is it simply a place, or is it something more, something deeper, something that speaks to the very core of our human experience?
Something to ponder for sure.
Until next time, folks, stay curious, stay safe, and keep exploring the mysteries of our world.
And don't forget to subscribe and follow for more deep dives into the unexplained.
Thanks for joining us.